Hello everyone. Now, when I was a lad, I've made no secret of this before and mentioned it many times. My granddad, who was a career gardener, taught me so much about gardening, but he also got me to meet other gardeners and probably got my foot in the door of places that I otherwise wouldn't have if I didn't have that granddad, you know. And one of them was on a local allotment, a lad called Macca. I call him a lad, I shouldn't really, because he was an old boy. Had one of those allotment gardens where everything was pristine. There wasn't a leaf out of place, and if it was out of place, it was quickly cajoled back to where it should be. But he was a brilliant gardener, and he was ever such a friendly chap, and because he was friends with my granddad, he kind of took me on board. And when I turned up there for an hour or two at the weekend, he would allow me to dig a patch of ground over it, or show me how to do it, or we'd sow seeds together, do all those sort of learning things. But the things I remember about him were his old ways and his old methods, things that have long since been lost, but they're now coming back into prominence. And I remember such things as how he used to start his new potatoes early in his greenhouse to get a good start on the year and to get an early crop. Well, one of the things that did strike me, and I've probably used it 4 or 5 times throughout my life, not as much as I should, was hotbeds. And these are beds where you use manure or compost to get a heat going in a bed. You put a frame on top of it, covered in glass as they were then, they were called lights then. They were basically a door frame, all glass in them, and you cover the bed with that, and you could grow early crops in them. Now, I think it was about, in a couple of months' time, it would be 3 years ago, early 2020, I had a hotbed here, but I didn't quite do it right, and the supply of materials I had wasn't quite right, so it didn't quite work. But it was a trial, and I found out and learnt about it. But I'm going to institute another hotbed in the early part of next year, and we'll go over and have a little talk about that now. Now, this area is where the new polytunnel's going. I showed this just a little while ago actually, and I was hoping to get it all dug over and ready. Obviously the weather has curtailed that. Nothing I can do while this ground is solid as a rock. You can't move frozen earth. So that's had to stop, because this was where my old polytunnel was, and these beds are the beds that were in it. And it was just in this corner here where, when I started this channel back in 2020, I built a hotbed here, and the manure that I used to fill it wasn't quite as fresh as I would have liked to get it going. You really want fresh manure with straw in there mixed in, and that will generate enough heat to power a hotbed forward. Then you can put a frame on top, which is what I did. And I built a frame on top, and then I covered it all over, and the temperatures did get up, but they just didn't get up high enough or to where I would have liked. But the end result was that it had a lot of manure in this area, and then eventually when that rotted down, it got spread over the 2 beds. So the sheer physicality of making the bed wasn't wasted. And this is the good thing about hotbeds, is that you can use it to get an early start on the year, to get some crops going that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to grow. And then later on, you've got compost right in place, right where you want it. So if you place these strategically around your plot in various areas, you've got ready-made compost piles, and piles that you can use spread out without having to move them too far. So you're moving stuff just the once, as opposed to making a pile way down at the front of the plot there and then having to barrow the compost around later. So this is what I want to be doing again here in this new tunnel, is building a new hotbed. I pretty much knew when I was building it that it wasn't going to be as efficient as I wanted it to be, but with that little test, because I do so many tests here, and by doing a test you can find out, learn and move on and improve. So I'm hoping to build it, and it'll probably be up in this area. Haven't quite decided yet. I'll wait till the tunnel's up and then see where we go from there. But if you want to learn about hotbeds, there's quite a good book here. This is by a guy called Jack First, and this is a book about hotbeds, and it tells you all about the origins of them, how the Victorians utilised them. I mean, they used to grow pineapples in them, and that was the done thing on the big old estate gardens. And I've seen some of those hotbeds and worked with some of them in a garden that I worked at 10 years after I first learned about them. I went and volunteered at an estate garden, and the things that they had and the amount of manure that they must have had to have moved by horse and cart was just simply phenomenal. But when you look at them, some of those gardens had staff of like 100, 150 people, so they had the manpower to do it. But it was just simply incredible. And also, like in France, they used to grow lettuces out of season and transport them to London by using hotbeds, and they would build them really close to each other. And then the paths were lined with manure as well to keep the whole field warm. Again, tremendous amounts of manure used and shifted by these guys working these fields. That was when you had to work, and that was when you had to work to earn your money. So this is what I want to be doing in this tunnel once this is up in January, and as soon as possible. Shouldn't be too difficult round here. I'm quite rural, so it shouldn't be too difficult to secure a supply of manure. But that's where we're going with this tunnel, and hopefully I would like to be able to have a second hotbed in this tunnel as a test, because I want to use one as a compost pile as well, a proper normal compost. But we'll see about that when we get there. Now, this ground is pretty much frozen solid, as you would expect. And last night on the Polytunnels Garden Club, I gave a tip at the end, and it was about not digging in frozen soil. Now, what can happen is, during this freeze that we've got in a minute, the top 5 inches of soil will freeze and freeze solid. Maybe 4 or 5 inches, somewhere around there. And soil is like a thermal store and like a thermal blanket, and it will keep that cold. But the soil underneath will remain unfrozen. Now, if we get a thaw for a couple of days, the top couple of inches might defrost, and you'll think, oh, I can scrape that around. That's okay, I'll start digging. And there might only be a couple of inches of frozen ground left in the middle, sort of banded, unfrozen underneath, unfrozen on top, and this little layer cake in the middle is frozen. And if you come along with a fork or a spade and dig through, you might not notice that frozen area in there, and your fork or spade will go in a good 9 inches or so into the soil. So if you start turning that over, you're turning that frost lower into that soil, and the thermal blanket effect of your soil will keep that frozen, and it can keep it frozen underneath where you're not seeing it or knowing about it till anywhere up till next June. So do be careful of that, and the best way to get around that and see what your soil is like is to dig a hole. If you're going to be digging over an area, dig several holes, have a look, have an investigate, but investigate, feel it with your hands so you can sense the temperature. And that's vital, because you don't want cold soil while you're trying to put plants out in the spring, and you won't know, and the roots will just get to a cold area and they'll just not do anything more than what they've already done, and it can hold you back, although you don't know about it. And I've actually seen this in practice a few times over the years, where we've dug down to investigate what's happening underneath the plants and found frozen ground. So it's something to be aware of at this time of the year. I say, not everyone digs these days. A lot of people are on no dig, like I am here, but there are a lot of people out there who still religiously dig their soil every year, and it works very well for them. And the autumn clear up for a lot of people, and the autumn dig over and spreading manure and those kind of things still go on. So the temptation is, after a couple of days or a week or so of cold weather where a gardener can't get out into his garden, you get a nice warm day and you think, right, I'm going to go out and start digging. But just be wary of that cold band of soil within your soil. The top might look great, but underneath it's still cold. Dig a test hole and have a look. Outside at the hop bin, let's have a little look in here. A bit frosty. Oh yeah, there's some steam coming off that. So that grass is heating that up in there. Pretty pleased about that. So let's have a look at the temperature in here. I've got a thermometer in here now. And it's about 20 degrees. That's not bad considering it's -6 at the moment. So I'll put a link to Jack's book just underneath this video in the description if you want to get hold of it. It's available on Amazon now, £8.50, and there's only 7 copies left after that. Or if you want to, or choose better, you can buy it on a Kindle. I think it's about a £5, but it's a definite good read, and it will certainly increase your knowledge with how to use and utilise resources on your plot. If you're getting a load of manure delivered, utilise that heat to do something with it as it's rotting down, and then you can use it when it's rotted down, so you're getting double bubble from it. But that's it for today. I hope you got something from this. Don't forget to subscribe so you can watch how I get on with the polytunnel and eventually the hotbed, see what I do with it, because I think I've got some good ideas of how to utilise it better than I have previously. So we'll look forward to doing that. But for now, look after yourselves everyone, especially in this cold, and please stay safe. See you all very soon. Ta-ra now.